Our reckless food system generates enough waste to displace the GDP of Mexico. Food waste contributes more to climate change than air travel, and while 800 million people in the world go hungry, we waste 1/3 of the food we grow. Food in the wrong place at the wrong time goes to waste, costing us in lives lost, a climate degraded, and money squandered. My guest today on First Mile's Climate Heroes has saved over 200 million meals and has been redistributing surplus food since 2016. Jamie Crummie is co-founder of food redistribution app TooGoodToGo, and it's a huge pleasure to welcome him to the show. Jamie, welcome to First Mile's Climate Heroes.
No, thank you very much for having me. A pleasure to be on board.
Excellent. So, Jamie, how did you become a climate hero, and what motivates you to fight food waste?
So I don't think I've ever been referred to as a climate hero before, so I'm slightly blushing right now. Probably wouldn't refer to myself as a climate hero, but what sort of got me into the world of food waste is sort of it can be a long story, but I might give you the short one today. But in essence, I've always been someone who's been motivated by social and environmental impact.
Yeah. So
prior to starting TooGoodToGo, I was working in human rights law. And that was very much the trajectory in which I was going on until this topic of food waste, which I think we often term as the world's dumbest problem.
Yeah,
it really got its hooks into me. Food itself is it's something which is imperative to our lives, right? Without food, we cannot live, quite literally.
Yeah.
But it's also that social glue that brings us around the table. So it's something that is inherently implicit within all of our lives and plays a vital. And so when I was understanding more of the impact that wasting food in our food system was having on the planet, on people, I felt compelled to do something around it. And that whole journey into food waste is quite an interesting one. So I was, as I say, I was working in human rights law. I was actually doing an event which was catered for by people who rescued food from the bin.
Right.
So people who are dumpster diving, and they put on this incredible spread. And it got me thinking, how can we rescue this food before it hits the bin in the first place?
Yeah.
And, as they say, the rest is sort of history. But that whole motivation behind it has been this desire to create impact around principles of around the environment and socially as well.
And as you say, it's the dumbest problem, and there's always some big numbers bandied around food waste. And in my introduction, I'm guilty. And it does seem to be like wherever you look, there's a problem around food waste. And this month is Stop Food Waste Day. I think this podcast is actually going out on Stop Food Waste Day, so we're all gunning for less food waste. But it's a big problem. What's the sort of area of focus for TooGoodToGo? Because we hear of food that's grown and then left on the farm because supermarkets change their mind right through the supply chain. So presumably you're not working right across that supply chain. You've got a bit of a niche.
Well, you're right to point out that food waste is happening all across the food value chain from farm through to fork. And how we started with TooGoodToGo was very much focusing on that sort of consumption end, so that last end of the food value chain, and looking at how we can work with businesses and consumers to essentially give them tangible tools to empower them to reduce food waste within their own lives, within their own operations. So that has meant working with retailers, with food service sector, and of course with consumers as well. But as we've expanded, as we've grown over these past sort of 9 or so years, we're now exploring other ways in which we can create impact across this value chain.
Yeah.
So our app predominantly works within the retail and food service sector. But a few years ago, we launched an initiative called our Look, Smell, Taste, Don't Waste initiative. And this is where we work with FMCG brands to help them communicate to their consumers that once food has gone beyond its best before date, it's still safe to consume. We can just need to look, smell, and taste our food. So that's one way in which we've been trying to create impact further up the food value chain. And then further down the food value chain, we've then launched most recently a new business line called our Magic Parcels, which is where we work with manufacturers on the continent and have a direct-to-consumer offering. So this is something now which is live in Denmark, it's live in France, Italy, Belgium and Netherlands.
And do they get posted out, or do they get taken to sort of food banks and picked up?
They get posted out direct to the consumer. So it could be, a breakfast parcel, or it could be a baby food parcel, and it's all food that would otherwise have gone to waste. So
amazing.
Original focus was looking at that food value, or looking at that food waste happening within that consumption end.
Yeah.
We've now sort of expanded into looking at households through our date label, and now most recently in manufacturing and processing through our parcels business. But as a business, as a whole, our whole motto is, we dream of a planet with no food waste.
Yeah.
So, we'd love to be able to create this end-to-end solution.
And are you expanding into those other parts of the value chain because you're finding that you actually dominated the sort of magic bag sort of part of the market where, you go on the app and there's just food available all over, which is amazing. You save 200 million meals. I think you've
330 million now.
330 million. Excellent. The Too Good To Go app is rolled out in multiple continents and dozens of countries. And are you going down that value chain because you feel like you've sort of got as far as you can, or have we got loads of roads still to run?
Yeah, really good question. Best answer would be yes, we've completed it. It would be brilliant. But no, it's the motivation to expand into other areas is really centered around us being a purpose-driven and mission-driven organization. So by no means have we solved food waste across retail and food service.
Yeah.
But there's now just an opportunity, as we've operated at the scale at which we are, to start looking at how we can create impact across other areas of that food value chain.
Yeah.
So as I say, as a purpose-driven business, we want to be inspiring and empowering businesses everywhere to reduce food waste.
Yeah, brilliant. And so the original concept, it's brilliant because it's the more you grow, the more people that use Too Good To Go, the app, the more magic bags that are out there, the more impact you're having. So it's sort of is a sort of virtuous cycle of more customers, more growth, more impact. But that basic original service, I'm calling it basic, it's very high tech. How does that work for listeners and viewers that don't know Too Good To Go?
It's for those that aren't aware of Too Good To Go, it's pretty simple, or at least we try and keep things simple. So you would log on to the Too Good To Go app, and you'll see a whole host of different food businesses, and these can range from your local bakery through to a high street coffee chain or a supermarket or retailer, and you purchase for a reduced price what we call a surprise bag. So you don't.
Sorry, not a magic bag. We call it a magic bag. It's a surprise bag.
We used to call it a magic bag, but we've pivoted now to a surprise bag.
Why the different? Why the change?
As we were expanding into different markets, just from a translation point, it was a lot simpler.
Yeah.
I think it kind of encapsulates what it is. It is a surprise in terms of what it is you're getting. With that whole surprise bag concept, consumer doesn't know exactly what it is they're going to get. That's really because the whole nature of food waste itself is relatively unpredictable. So you would pay typically around about a third of the full retail price. Yeah. So if you're paying sort of £5, $5, €5, you'd usually expect to get £15, $15, €15 worth of food. Yeah. But sometimes that reduction could be at around 50%.
Well, we've got a surprise for you because James here, our producer of the podcast and show, got a surprise bag earlier.
Brilliant.
Magic bag. So we're going to do a live unravelling for you from the beautiful Pret.
Oh, fantastic.
So here we go. So have a look and you can tell us what's in the surprise bag that we've got.
Okay, so today we have a chicken laksa soup.
Delicious.
From Pret.
This is James's dinner, so he's hoping
we've got what else have we got? We've got a Swedish meatball hot wrap. And we have, last but by no means least, a macaroni and cheese with some prosciutto ham in there as well. So very fancy.
Fantastic. And all of that was, James, how much? £4, and the recommended retail price was £12, so you're bang on with it being a third. So The live test worked brilliantly for us.
I think I might be collecting a prayer after this podcast as well, so I can compare bags.
There you go, perfect. Have you ordered yours already?
I have indeed.
We better not make you late. For the pickup. Now, on the app, last question before we move on from that. This is all very meat heavy and meat related. Can you choose if you're a veggie or a vegan or whatever, and you can presumably put a filter on there?
So the nature again of the surprise bag means you can't choose exactly what it is you're going to get.
For sure.
But through the app itself, there are these filters.
Yeah.
So as we're growing, we have been able to introduce filters, so vegan and vegetarian filters as well. And then, of course, if there's allergy things or allergen requirements, then we'd encourage people to voice those to the store upon collection.
And it must be very compelling for the retailers and the people in the food supply chain, because they're actually, albeit at a discount, they're selling the food rather than throwing it away, and then they're not getting revenue for it. And worst case scenario is they have to put it in the bin and then pay someone like First Mile to take it away and recycle it or dispose of it. But is there sort of a bit of a hierarchy in terms of, because there's other people in your marketplace as well? I mean, we've got Felix Project in London, I think they're mainly in London, who are doing sort of more redistribution of food that's sort of into a hub and spoke where it's sort of short sell by date. Then you've got Olio, who are very community based around streets. And is this a sort of a hierarchy where you end up with, you try and, if you're a prep, for example, we've got it live here, try and sell it through the shop first. If that doesn't work, sell it through Too Good To Go. If that doesn't work, you're putting it onto the Olio app, or have sort of the team sort of lost the will to live by the time they've tried to put it onto Too Good To Go and then shut up the shop and put it in the bin.
Well, you're right to allude there to the premise of this food waste hierarchy.
Yeah.
And for any business out there, they're producing food, they're selling food because food is intended to be eaten. So it's, can they sell it at full price?
Yeah.
If not, can it be reduced? And this is where platforms like Too Good To Go come in. Then can it be sent for donations, or for and then beyond that it would be things like animal feed, and then finally, is it anaerobic digestion?
Yeah,
something like that. So it is following this food waste hierarchy for our partners, and really it's trying to just make as an efficient process as possible to ensure that none of this food goes to waste.
Yeah.
And it's creating a tool which is simple for our partners to implement, but it's also simple for consumers to get. And we talk about this win-win-win. It's a win for our consumers who are able to get food at a price which is potentially more, but it's also a win for businesses. As you say, they get to reduce their waste disposal costs, but they also get to recover some of the sunk costs of those ingredients.
Yeah.
And ultimately, it's a win for the planet, because none of this food is going to waste. And that is the crux of all of this, is embracing circularity to ensure that no food has to end up in the bin.
So should I be worried? You're going to put me out of business?
I think the reality is we need to be able to work with partners as much as possible to reduce that food waste. When we look at the grand scheme of things, food waste contributes to 10% to the world's greenhouse gas emissions. As you mentioned earlier, there are hundreds of millions of people who are going hungry across the planet. So the very notion that we're throwing food away, really doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
So what can we do to bring these to address these inefficiencies and make our food system much more resilient and much more efficient?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think our approach as well is, there's so much waste. We're not going to be out of business anytime soon. And the key thing here is that you're not actually stopping food waste, you're redistributing edible food, I think is the key thing. And we're always saying to customers, you need to try and get people to eat the food. You'd be surprised, some of our customers phone up and say, is this food waste or not? And we're like, well, would you eat it? If you wouldn't eat it, it's not food waste.
Yeah.
So I think that is a really important distinction. And businesses will always have some food waste to some extent, whether it's potato peeling or wasted food or whatever. But wherever we can, we try and get people to recycle as much food waste, redistribute as much food waste as possible. And if there's anything left over, we'd be happy to take it away. We're about to hear now from Sarah, who is one of my colleagues, who's going to talk to us about what we can do with food waste. We have arranged a special First Mile food waste interlude for this section of the podcast. And I'm delighted to be joined by Sarah Shealy, who is Head of Sales at First Mile. Welcome to Climate Heroes.
Hello, thank you.
Sarah, thanks for your time. Can you tell us why it's so important for businesses to recycle food waste?
Of course. There's a huge amount of food waste that's produced every year within the UK, which is crazy when you think of the millions of starving people that there are around the world. And actually, when food waste goes to landfill, it creates around 10% of the world's greenhouse emissions. And so it's really important that we minimise that by recycling food.
Brilliant. And things are starting to change with the regulations, I think, from next year.
Yes.
What's your view on the upcoming simpler recycling rules?
Well, I think one of the main things that we get told from our customers is that recycling can be really complicated. And so this upcoming legislation is all about making it simpler for people to be able to recycle. And there isn't differences with different local authorities in terms of what they do, what they recycle and what they can take. So I think it's really positive in trying to standardise and make things simpler for everybody, whether it's at home or whether it's at your place of work. It will be about having to recycle food separately and making sure that's out of your general waste, as well as things like glass, aluminium, plastics, cardboard, paper. So it's all about encouraging recycling and making sure the same processes are available wherever you are.
And so, in effect, it's making food waste recycling mandatory.
Exactly that, yeah.
And when does that start?
So that starts in April 2025 in England, but it's already in place in Scotland and has been since 2016. And earlier this month, it came into effect in Wales.
So we should, by 2025, everybody in the UK, it'll be mandatory for businesses to recycle food waste.
Absolutely. And all local authorities will also have to provide a weekly food waste collection from your homes.
Brilliant. Do you think it's going to work? Do you think people will get on
Of
board?
course, yes, of course. It's really important because I think it's all about education and understanding the impact that food waste does have. We see all too often, as we said, the starving people around, and actually it's about minimising food waste, making sure that, people aren't overbuying and they're not, looking for the right ways to dispose of food waste. So, working with people like TooGoodToGo to get rid of food that's edible and still able to be used, and then putting in a food waste service with us to collect anything else outside of that, to make sure that it's not going to landfill. But it's all about education and making sure customers are set up.
And are we already seeing an increased interest in food waste recycling?
Yeah, we really are. I think it started to be spoken about anyway. And also, I think not only is it really good for the environment, but also it's cheaper than putting it into general waste. So customers are really engaged in terms of food waste, but also wanting to do something that's better for the planet.
And are we just picking up food waste curbside, or are we working right through the supply chain with our customers?
Yeah, all the way through the supply chain. So we work with lots of customers like Pret, Ottolenghi, Cafe Nero, Gales, and it might be working with distribution centres, with dark kitchens, or with single stores to recycle their food waste. So that could be in a big skip or a ro-ro. It might be curbside collections in sacks or bins, dailies. Whatever service they need, we can provide that and make sure they get regular food collections as they need.
Brilliant. And so once we've picked it up, what happens to the food waste?
Good question. So unfortunately, sometimes food waste isn't just food waste. It can be contaminated. There can be some food packaging in it. So once we've collected it, we bulk it and send it to the anaerobic digestion facility. There it is taken through a process where the packaging is removed and all the contamination is taken out. That's turned into energy from waste. Then the food waste goes through an anaerobic digester, and that is turned into green energy.
Brilliant. Sounds fantastic. And what's our website if people want to find out about using our services?
It's www.thefirstmile.co.uk.
Brilliant. Thanks, Sarah. We're now going to go back to the main show.
Great.
First Mile is the UK's leading recycling company, and we help over 30,000 businesses recycle to reduce their carbon impact. Go to our website, thefirstmile.co.uk, to get started today. If you're enjoying this episode, please subscribe and follow us on YouTube, Spotify, or Apple. So, Jamie, we talk a lot about food waste contributing 10% to climate change, but this is the surprise bag that we got earlier. Is it the food here? Is it 10% carbon impact because of the cost of disposing of it, or is it the cost of producing it, sending it around the planet, and everything? So, can you clear up when we say it's bad for the planet? What do we mean?
Very good question, and it can be completely confusing. So very happy to try and shed some light on this. Like when we're talking about the environmental impact and the climate impact of food, we're talking about the whole journey that this
Right.
food has gone on.
Yeah.
So when we're wasting food, we're wasting the land which has been converted to grow our food. We're wasting the labor which has been used to harvest our food, the water which has been used to grow it as well. It's a waste of the fertilizers and all of those associated emissions that come with commercial fertilizers and the impact that's having on our water system, particularly when that dries off or washes off into our waterways. It's then a waste of the fuel which is used to transport our food all the way from farm through to fork. It's a waste of the electricity and the emissions associated that with refrigerating our food, and that can be refrigerating it in the supermarkets, in our own homes, as well as in distribution centers and further down the supply chain. And so really when we're wasting that food, it isn't purely the plate of food in front of us, it's all of those emissions which have gone into producing it. And so when you're able to rescue food, those emissions themselves, like they haven't been made in vain.
Yeah.
But also by rescuing food, you're then not, buying additional food as well. And so you're having this compounded positive impact on the environment.
So even if we took that food waste and recycled it in the most beautiful way possible and turned it into fantastic green energy, it would still be an environmental catastrophe because we'd have lost all of that brilliant work done to grow the food in the first place.
Pretty much, when you think of that whole environmental impact, if you take something as innocuous as like a slice of bread, like that bread, the amount of emissions to create it are really like quite significant. Because you think, it was going to need a patch of land, so you're going to then have to cut down some woodland or some forests. You're then going to like plow and till that land. You're going to use machinery to do that, and each time you're doing so, there's like another drop of gasoline, another drop of fuel, and this all does have a huge impact. Not to mention then the miles that our food is traveling. So you've then got to harvest that wheat. You then got to take it to a mill. From there, you're using additional energy to bake that bread, and then additional energy to transport it, perhaps going into packaging. And so all of these things, as I say, have this compound impact. So the best thing we can do, the most environmental thing we can do with food is to eat it.
It's eat it, exactly, yeah. I mean, it is why, when you talk about it like that, you can see why it's the dumbest problem. You do all of that, take it to a shop and then throw it in the bin. It is dumb.
I mean, I think, if we talk about like the journey of a banana is another one. Like we're sat here in central London, and like bananas that we're going to source here have probably come from as far as Australia or Western Africa or South America. And that whole journey of like a banana itself is huge. It will have traveled typically by ship from the other side of the world. For us then to waste it just seems so ridiculous. Like, why would we put all of this effort into super complicated food supply chains to then just waste this food? It really is, as I say, the dumbest problem when we think of the environmental impact, the social impact as well when there are people going hungry, but also the financial impact. Globally, we spend about $1.2 trillion each year on food which would go to waste. In the UK, that's over 20 billion.
It's crazy.
And these are figures that we can't really put into context.
And so this episode's going out on Stop Food Waste Day. Is that going to help? Are you involved in that? What's the day about?
Stop Food Waste Day. These days are really important, and important about raising awareness. Now, I think lots of us, particularly in our own homes, we're guilty of throwing food away. And that isn't us trying to point the finger or point blame, but there are lots of things that we can do within our own homes to try and reduce food waste ourselves. So anything from storing our food better. If we store our food at the correct temperatures in our fridge, in our freezers, it's going to last longer. we can understand date labels a little bit better, so that when food has gone beyond its best before date, can we start using our senses? So as I say, these days like Stop Food Waste Day, I think serve a real purpose in raising the awareness of food waste itself, creating a narrative around it, and really trying to engage and shift public discourse so that people feel more aware, but also more informed, and ultimately more empowered, so they know what to do to reduce food waste within their daily lives. And in addition to that, we can have businesses as well seeing what they can do to improve their journey towards food waste reduction as well.
And tell us a little bit more about the campaign you're doing, which is smell, taste,
look, smell, taste, don't waste.
Look, smell, taste. Because I thought this problem was solved because we used to have a sell by date, a use by date, or a best before date, and I thought that had all been sorted out. It sounds like we're not there yet. If you're campaigning for something else,
so there's a huge amount of confusion around best before dates and date labels in general. Yeah. So in the UK, we waste around £500 million worth of food every single year as a result of confusion around date labels. More broadly speaking, in Europe, it's around 10% of all food wasted in Europe is a result of date label confusion. So it is a big problem, and one which we haven't yet solved as a society. Though there are simple things that we can do, and we feel that just giving people these tools so that they feel empowered to use their senses and to use their common sense can help to start reducing food waste within our own homes. I mean, there's some really bonkers things out there. Yeah. Like I've been in the supermarket and seen Himalayan salt with a best before date on. I mean, it's hundreds if not more years old. Like it's not going off, and its quality is not going to subside or anytime soon. So the reason that, or the fact that we even have date labels on products like this is beyond me. So this whole initiative, as I say, is also about trying to get food producers to transition from use by to best before date when it's safe to do so. Yeah. But also remove best before dates when it's not necessary, in a Himalayan salt type example. Yeah,
exactly. And then the look, smell, taste. Mm-hmm. Is that the right way around? Are you getting traction with that? Are customers feeling that or consumers feeling that they're confident enough to make a decision that they feel happy with?
So the label itself is now on about 1 billion different products, right? Wow. In circulation. Yeah. With this, it's something which is going to take scale. Yeah. And it's there on pack to act as a behavioural nudge. Yeah. So that when people see this label, they're reminded to use their senses and use their common senses to look, smell, and taste. And I mean, we all probably do it, right? When we're pouring our cup of tea in the morning or milk on the cereal, you give it the subconscious sniff just to make sure it's okay. Yeah. It's just about normalizing these habits and bringing them back into people's confidence and into people's routines as well.
Yeah. Everything we've talked about is fantastic, but it is all working within the paradigm of the current sort of food system, and you're trying to sort of fix the problems in a broken system in some sort of way, redistributing surplus food, overcoming problems with crazy sell-by dates on Himalayan salt. But is there a risk here that we're just sort of slightly papering over the cracks of the fundamentals, which is how we grow food, how we cook food, how we eat food? It's fundamentally wrong. And we're even, we've got these brilliantly sophisticated distribution systems where we can bring bananas from Costa Rica to Sainsbury's in Hackney, but we can't feed 800 billion people who go hungry. So we can't be that good at distributing food around the world. And actually, we've got enough food, it's just in the wrong places. So do we need to, and are you at TooGoodToGo doing anything that's more fundamental about saying, we need to change the very sort of paradigm in which food is operating, and we need to think more like this?
You raise a really, really great point there, which is the issue with our food system and the very notion that we're wasting like 40% of the food that we produce, that we're wasting over 40,000 meals every single second. highlights that our food system is fundamentally broken. And so we as an organization, we exist because we want to address this food waste problem. We exist because we want to inspire people and empower people as well as businesses to actively do something to reduce that, to reduce food waste. And so there's things that we have to do. So in the short term, we have to give people tools to be able to reduce food waste in the immediacy. But alongside this, as a business and as an organization, we work a lot in the public affairs space as well. So trying to spark some policy change to really address some of those fundamental issues within our food system as well. And so we've been, part of, a whole group of organizations at the moment who are lobbying for mandatory food waste reporting here in the UK. This again centers around this whole piece of setting targets, measuring it, and then acting upon it. Because if we don't actually know how much food businesses are wasting here in the UK, how can they really act upon that? And by introducing legislative change as well, alongside creating tangible tools, I think we're getting a lot closer to readdressing the issues with our food system. But it isn't easy. The food system itself is hugely complex. We have a population of over 8 billion people, all of these people needing to be fed, all these people needing to eat. Of those 8 billion, around 1 billion people are smallholder farmers. You mentioned about us bringing bananas from Costa Rica. The amount of complexity involved in our food supply chains means it is very, very hard to fix, very, very hard to change because of just purely as well because of the amount of stakeholders involved within that. But as a organization, I think what we can do is give businesses tools to start addressing food waste itself. And then we can start working with governments and more supranational organizations to ensure that we're heading in the right direction and implementing, whether it's legislative changes or different regulations, to really make sure that we can address this at scale.
A big thing that's happening in our world, in the recycling industry and at First Mile, is this new piece of legislation called Simpler Recycling that starts next year. Started in Wales earlier this month in April, and Scotland have had something similar for several years. But Simpler Recycling, one of the things, it makes food waste recycling mandatory for businesses. There might be some de minimis thresholds. Is that going to be a threat for Too Good To Go, or is that going to be an opportunity as it raises awareness about food waste recycling, but it's also telling customers that they need to recycle food waste, and maybe they go, actually, we have to do it anyway. We'll chuck it in a bin, sweep the problem under the carpet, and away we go. What's your view?
Well, again, as a purpose-driven business, which myself and my co-founders, we started this because we dream of a planet with no food waste. Any initiatives that are going to help us get to that aim are super welcome by us. And I think if I understand the regulation correct, it will ensure that all 300 plus local councils across the UK do food waste recycling. A really positive step for Too Good To Go as well, because it will mean more people are aware of food waste happening within their own lives. And we can then give these people different tips and tricks on how to reduce food waste within their homes. So whether it's storing food correctly, whether it's looking at date labels, whether it's utilizing apps and technology like Too Good To Go itself, I think this all becomes part of a general narrative of raising awareness around food waste itself and giving people information and tools on how they can do it, which again I think touches on your comment earlier around Stop Food Waste Day itself. It inevitably, or its aim is to raise awareness and bring food waste into public discourse. And so the more people that are talking about it, the more people that are aware of it, and thus reducing food waste or recycling food waste in their homes, I think it's all positive.
So Jamie, we have something on the podcast, on the show, which is called our Climate Heroes Hall of Fame, and this is where we ask guests to put something into our Hall of Fame, which at some point in the future we'll open it up and see what's in there. We've got everything from a bucket of worms to David Attenborough, a Brompton bicycle. I think someone might put the sun in there, so it's quite hot. So what would you put in the Hall of Fame?
I would bring Mary Robinson as my climate hero. She's former president of Ireland and the chair of the Elders. She has been a huge advocate for climate justice and the climate movement, and someone who I think is just incredibly inspirational. And when you hear her speak, she really knows her stuff as well. So we need more Mary Robinsons, and if this is a time capsule, we need to keep her for the future somehow. Alongside that, I'm trying to think of a book. I would probably go with Project Drawdown, written by Paul Hawkins. So this is like the most comprehensive book or report on solutions for reducing the effects of climate change. And interestingly, the book itself, it calls out as food waste as being that number one action that we as individuals can do to help reduce climate change or limit global warming by 2 degrees by 2100.
Yeah, and easy to do. So what have you got coming up, Jamie, Too Good To Go? Anything you can tell us that's sort of juicy forward things that's coming up? You talked to us about your on-package labelling, the parcels, which sounds amazing, the surprise parcels. What's in the pipeline that we can look forward to from Too Good To Go?
So exciting things happening at Too Good To Go. We're going to be growing and expanding from a geographical point of view. So we'll be launching Too Good To Go in Prague later this year. And we'll also be going to Australia as well later on in the year. So it would be really exciting for us to take it to a third continent and bring Too Good To Go to the Southern Hemisphere.
And how many countries will you be in when you've got Prague and Australia?
When we're in Czechia and in Australia as well, that will bring us to a total of 19 countries.
Wow, amazing. 19 countries over three continents.
Over three continents.
It's very impressive. And what's the target for 2024?
The target for 2024 so is to keep growing, to work with more businesses, to grow our community, and to rescue as much food as possible. And
do you have a meals saved target, or is that something that just it's all good, so you don't actually say we're going to do 500 million meals in 24? Or do you not disclose it?
We do have targets. I think it's important for us to have metrics and KPIs to work towards, so we can track and measure our own performance. But for us, it really is just about growing as much as possible and rescuing as much food as we can across our community, so that no good food goes to waste.
What a perfect way to end. I mean, it's almost like we rehearsed it. Jamie, it's been a huge pleasure having you on First Miles Climate Heroes. Jamie Crummie from Too Good To Go, thanks so much for coming on the show.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.